A 4-0 drubbing for EnVyUs in the semi-finals against Kongdoo Panthera really should, on paper, have everybody thinking that the Western teams are miles behind the top Koreans. And they're certainly behind. Let's not go that far to say that they're on the same level or ahead of them. But EnVyUs had some really close moments with Kongdoo Panthera. Obviously, Rogue, we now know, were in a group with the two best teams in the tournament. Although Lunatic High have changed things since then, but still. So EnVyUs in this game, in the semi-finals, yes, they lost 4-0, but they actually looked really good. They looked like they'd finally, well, I say really good. They looked really good compared to everybody else who plays Overwatch. You know, they looked good even when they were coming up against Kongdoo Panthera. So they look like they've really found a bit of their style. They look like they're implementing more strategic things into their team, a lot more positioning focused. They always were a team with a lot of coordination and a good idea of what to do in each team fight, I feel. That's been their style ever since the team was around, really. Like, incredible teamwork, but also incredible individual play from some people. I mean, Taimu's always been a carry for this team, but he's not in a meta where it really suits him at the moment, and now Effect has really stepped up. So I'll take a look. I want to try and do the whole match of Kongdoo Panthera EnVyUs and go through the moments where there was either really close fights between the two teams or interesting moments or stuff. So I'm not going to do the entirety. I'm going to do most of Oasis, though. I've skipped the first round of Oasis because it really doesn't favor EnVyUs. It was a bit of a drubbing. Panthera just had a good setup, and EnVyUs just tried to run like their 2-2-2 default, which is pretty weak on Garden, I think, of Oasis. So but coming into this one, there was some really interesting things, and it feels like all I talk about at the moment is Oasis, but the meta is developing on Oasis faster than a lot of the other maps, possibly because it's so new, but it also favors kind of Sombra on different stages and Farah Mercy on different stages. There's just quite a lot of diversity throughout the map. Then I'll go on to Numbani and then a bit of Hanamura. I'm not even going to touch on Route 66 because it was a bit of a roll. So, Kongdoo Panthera, very aggressive team. They love to take the initiative and dive, not afraid of running a bit of Sombra. Rascal's always the guy who picks it up. You can see him there. Sometimes Luffy or Waka Waka will switch over to Soldier 76 depending on which support they want up, i.e. do they want the Ana Zen, normally the Ana, or do they want the Lucio? Both of them fairly comfortable on the Soldier 76, the Waka Waka tends to be better. And very aggressive team, like I said, good at execute and dive, really strong duo of Birdring and Rascal, possibly the strongest DPS duo in the league. Though Effect and Taimu are no slouches as well, and they have some really good plays. But EnVyUs, not so crisp on their aggression. They like to set Envy and Taimu up in good positions, and as I said, they've got good teamwork and good idea of what they want to do in fights, and now they've started to implement a bit more strategy into their play. Oops, don't want to listen to the casters, unfortunately. I already have done once, though, so don't worry. Okay, so on this, we've got like this classic situation where a team's not running Sombra on this point of University, but EnVyUs have got a plan. You know, they're not just running into it assuming there's not going to be a Sombra. They obviously know what's going on, and we've seen, for example, I did a video on United's plan where they actually rushed bottom with a Reaper in a triple DPS as well. It was like Reaper Genji Tracer. It was a bit strange they don't have a diva in such a tight space, but that was their attempt at it. We saw other teams clashing down there with the Sombra. I think that was the Kongdoo Panthera and Lunatic High game when that happened. No, that was Luxury Watch Blue versus Lunatic High. And then EnVyUs have got this strategy. So they just allow Rascal to come bottom and hack the health kit. And then you'll see that the whole of EnVyUs are sat around like Inuits fishing. They're literally just sat around it like it's a hole in the ice and they're trying to drag somebody out. It could only be better if they had a Roadhog and they're just like slinging the hooks in, seeing if they get a salmon. Salmon? I swear, salmon are not an Antarctic or an Arctic fish. Okay. So this is their answer to it. They're going to apply a lot of pressure from the top, so they make sure that they have the high ground the whole time. They put a lot of poke and damage into them. Yes, Panthera can play the health kits. Yes, they're going to build up an EMP. Yes, they might even be able to flank them and send a couple of players up top. Like, they could send Birdring up top now, possibly even Luffy or Rascal, and just try and distract and peel players away and then engage with their tanks. But it does put a little bit more pressure on Fisher and Void to actually get anything done, because they don't just want to run, like, straight out of the hole. They'll take so much poke trying to do that. So, and it's also something different as well. I think this strategy worked so well, probably because Panthera haven't seen a team that plays it like this. This is certainly the first time I've ever seen a team just sit around it like it's a fishing hole. So they're literally just doing that. So Rascal, you can see him just translocate out there, and Waka Waka's taking a lot of damage. Waka Waka does something mad here as well, though. I'm not really sure why he does it, but he loops all the way around. You can see they're still just spamming. Here comes Waka Waka from the right-hand side. Luffy as well has taken a lot of damage. I'm not sure why Waka Waka hasn't come up here with Birdring. I really don't understand why Birdring still sits in the bottom for so long. Again, I think it's probably because they haven't come up against a strategy like this and they don't really have like a set plan of what they want to do. But Waka Waka takes damage. He wants to rotate up top. Just apply a little pressure. Maybe peel Effect out of there, or somebody else, you know, Harry Hook or Taimu might try and engage him, go head to head. Or maybe even he was going for a boop into the pit. I really don't know what's going through Waka Waka's mind here, because he's going up top as like a half-health Lucio. Just trying to distract, basically, and turn some eyes so that the rest of his team can get out of the hole. But I think he should have had somebody with him. Like, if he has Birdring with him in this position, he's so much stronger. And instead, Birdring stays underneath. Like, Luffy isn't great to actually rotate up top because they want him down there to attract eyes. So they keep Fisher, Void, and Luffy down here to attract everybody's attention down there. And they send some of their flankers in up top. So they send Rascal around as well. You know, Rascal, you saw him just on the left there. Just to attract some eyes. And you know, Waka Waka gets a lot of distraction done here and then kind of bumps into Harry Hook. But eventually he's taken down. And as I said, the Luffy and the tanks stay bottom, and then they finally come back out. And throughout the rest of this fight, kind of the tanks stay alive for ages, but they get the picks on other people. Taimu actually has Birdring's number for the most of Oasis, actually, hitting him with some really crisp Helix rockets. And they basically keep him alive. This EMP really doesn't do too much, no follow-up whatsoever. And even though the tanks are staying alive because they have this hacked health kit at the bottom, you know, Void and Fisher staying alive for ages, they really can't get that much done because they had inferior positioning, and the flankers that they sent up top were fairly well dealt with for EnVyUs. So I like this as a game plan, you know, it worked out pretty well. And even though I think there was definitely ways to crack it that Panthera would have had if they'd scrimmed against a team that was doing this regularly, I think. For starters, they would have put something like Birdring and Waka Waka up together and see if they could get like a pick onto one of the supports or take down Envy or Taimu, Effect or Taimu, sorry, a bit quicker. But yeah, they end up winning this fight, EnVyUs, and that's great. You know, that's the perfect start for them, because if Panthera get control there and they have Rascal on the Sombra, it gets really dicey for them. You know, they really don't have that much of a chance in this series. Sorry, in this stage, if Rascal gets the early position and manages to build up his EMP and all of this stuff. So I'm brain fart there for a second. All right, so then in the second fight, basically what happens is Luffy dies. Like they're running the poke. So they're running this like poke dive, the soldier tracer, like the double hit scan, Diva Winston, in here, and I don't like this in general against this kind of Sombra composition, because you don't really have the aggression. Like, you can't take the fight on your own speed. You're just waiting for a pick. It's much better if you're trying to play defensively, but into a Sombra when you have control of University, I feel like you probably want to be playing a bit more aggro. But then again, Taimu's not really going to be able to play that kind of fishing hole strategy as well with a... Well, they don't have a Genji anyway, so I don't know why I'm even talking about it. There is literally something they can't run. But anyway, it's not a great situation to be in here for EnVyUs, but they managed to find the pick onto Luffy a little bit in a second. Oh no, they get the pick on... They get a nice hack there onto Mickey. And then, okay, yada yada, EMP comes in, they get the kills, etc, etc. And voila. So Panthera managed to switch over control of the point here, but both of the support ults are up for EnVyUs now. And this is where they pick Luffy, sorry. So that fight happened literally because they came back in with the EMP, they get the hack onto Mickey, they really open it up, and, you know, EnVyUs can't take control of the tempo there because they're running this poker composition. Now, Taimu gets a pick onto Luffy here. I mean, Luffy isn't like a main Soldier 76. You can't actually tell, even when pausing it and stuff, what really happened there. But, okay, that's like a perfect opening fight. They really don't have that much damage now coming out from the rest of the team. They've got Birdring and Rascal and 2 tanks and a support. So EnVyUs can literally run into them, and they do so much damage. So they can just trade out support ults here. They go in with Chips' Transcendence. Waka Waka replies with a sound barrier of his own. And they just have so much more damage coming out from Taimu in Effect. And Taimu in Effect are really good, and they play really well all series, I feel. Whenever they're set up in a good position to succeed, you see them, like, they've got great accuracy. They just tear up these fights sometimes. So they, you know, that's a nice recap as well. They get the EMP out in the previous push. They come back in, trade the support ults, find a pick before they trade the support ults. Is like, it couldn't get any better. And then this fight is really cool, actually, because they're playing into this EMP from Rascal, but they know that there's no defensive support ult up apart from like the EMP. So, but Harry has his sound barrier. So there's this Lucio versus Sombra mind games that happen, you know, whenever you've got both of the ults up. And the way that EnVyUs try and tackle this is that they have a massive line of separation between their front line and their back line. Let's see if we can find a thing that shows it properly. All right, so Pulse Ball comes in, does a lot of damage to Void. I think you can just about see it here. God, when they have replays in this game, it'll be so much easier. So Effect is over here. That is Mickey, I believe. And then they also have Coco jumping in and out. And then, so they've got like the three in the front, and then they have Taimu, Chips, and Harry Hook at the back over here. And they're, at the moment, they're getting pressured by Fisher, Rascal, and Birdring. The three of those guys have gone behind into the back line. They've found a dive onto EnVyUs, and they're putting pressure on them. So in the midst of this dive, in the midst of this 3v3 fight between Fisher, Rascal, and Birdring, and Chips, Harry Hook, and Taimu, there's this mind game happening between Rascal and Harry Hook. But Harry can just use his sound barrier here whenever he wants, just to keep himself alive, because they're so far away from their front lines, from their tanks, and these are the people who are gonna get shredded if the EMP comes through. So he's put Rascal in a situation where he can't get value out of negating the sound barrier and getting the hacks onto everybody. So there we go. Oh, you didn't quite see it there, but Harry Hook got brought down to super little health, pops off his sound barrier just to readjust his position and like speed boost himself out and just make sure that he stays alive. He catches Chips and he catches Taimu with it there as well. And they do so much damage between them, mostly from Taimu, I think, as well. Taimu's hitting some nutty headshots and stuff at this point. They've done tons of damage over to Fisher. Lots of damage then happens to Rascal, and he's actually forced to... he uses his EMP, sorry, and it takes away the sound barrier from both of these guys. But because they've done so much damage to him, he has to translocate out, so he can't even help them. He can't even finish the kill onto Chips. So this is a pretty bad EMP usage from Rascal, because Harry put him in a position where if he wanted to negate the sound barrier, he had to basically waste his EMP and not follow up on it. So this is really good awareness from EnVyUs of what ults are up, how to kind of counteract them, how to put Rascal in a sticky position where he's not really getting much value out of it. And then Taimu just kind of shreds people because he does a load of damage to Rascal, forces him to translocate, and then he gets the kill onto Birdring as well. So he's just like running around like a monster, the final boss in the back lines of EnVyUs, keeping everybody alive. And Chips and Harry Hook, you know, survived by the skin of their teeth, but they do get it in the end. And then there's a couple of Primal Rages that are traded as Fisher desperately tries to finish off the kills on Chips and Harry Hook, but is not going to happen. So the next fight in about 20 seconds. So the next fight here is what could have been kind of the last fight of the game, because it looks pretty dicey here for Kongdoo Panthera. I'm actually going to wind it back a little bit. I kind of skipped a little too forward there. All right, let's have a look from here, because it's into overtime. EnVyUs have managed to hold on to it for ages, and Kongdoo Panthera have some ultimates, but they're not the great ones that they want to use, right? Rascal's already wasted his EMP previously, negating Harry Hook's sound barrier. Waka Waka had to use his sound barrier in a previous fight and hasn't been able to generate it. And then they've got, like, you know, you can occasionally pull out huge things if you get the attack visor or the pulse bomb into the right position, but they're not reliable ults, you know? They're not in a good position to win this. And so as they come in, boop onto Fisher. Fisher gets taken down. Chips uses his Transcendence, and they're looking like they're in a decent position to take this fight. But this crazy Void self-destruct comes in over the top here, just after they'd got the pulse bomb onto Mickey and demeched him. And so Mickey goes down to try and avoid it, because that's the quickest way of him trying to get out of anything. Like, he's desperately trying to dive into the hole. But Void set up this thing so that it has line of sight directly over the hole. It basically explodes like right over here. It's like some set smoke that he's done from over in this corner. An Effect was dueling Birdring over here, and Birdering forces him to step out into the doorway, so he actually gets caught as well. So they get a double kill with this, and it basically just opens the door for them. And it's a massive boon for Kongdoo Panthera. Big clutch play coming out from Void. And they get the EMP in the middle of it as well. But the EMP alone wouldn't have been able to turn that fight, I don't think. I think it was mostly because they got so much value out of Void's bomb there and synced it up so nicely with the Mickey D-Mech. Okay, so basically they hold on to the fight for another little while, and then you have this fight. And they trade a fight there that gets some of these defensive ultimates back on board. So Rascal gets, they have another engagement. EnVyUs come back in. They go aggressive to try and build up their own defensive support ultimates and Taimus, and it builds them on the other side as well, obviously. So Waka Waka, Rascal, Chips, and Harry Hook are both close to theirs. They've got ults all around, basically. And now it's, for EnVyUs, it's another job of how do we avoid Rascal's ultimate and manage to retake this point without getting hit by the EMP. And for Kongdoo Panthera, what's really crucial here is that Void got taken out of mech in the previous fight. I think I was saying it in my previous video how I've seen more and more of the Apex teams really prioritize at the end of a fight when they know that it's going badly, D-meching the D.Va and just kind of leaving her there. They did the same here to Void, and he couldn't throw himself off because he died. Like, it's right at the end of the fight. So if you throw yourself off, there's 10-second opportunity for EnVyUs to basically come back in, because they died, like, what, 4 or 5 seconds before you managed to finally get to the edge and throw yourself off. So there's at least a 5-6 second window there where they can come back in and you're miles out of position, unable to help if you're even inside the mech. So it can be quicker just to stay out of mech, and that's the decision that Void's ended up going with. So he's demeched, and this is a massive difference for the team because now they can't really dive aggressively with the EMP because they wouldn't have the defense matrix to put onto everybody. It would be kind of easier for EnVyUs to play defensively in that situation. So they don't feel comfortable doing that. They want to sit back and wait for Void to remech. And so Rascal goes for the cheeky kind of bait play. So again, here's like another mind games, meta game kind of thing where Rascal and Chips are in, this time it's on the Transcendence. So we've seen a lot of teams, if the Sombra translocates in and looks like they're going for an EMP, then a lot of the defensive teams will pop this Transcendence and try and get some really early picks quickly so that you don't instantly get the Zen picked. Because if the EMP comes off, obviously, well, first of all, Chips is dead because all of this shield's going to go, and then he's just going to burst it down. And then your big defensive ultimate's gone as well. So it's better to keep players alive and go for some really early picks there if you can manage to pop out the Transcendence early enough. But then you've got like the next layer of it where Sombras just translocate in, look like they're going to do it, and then try and just bait it out of the enemy Zen whilst actually holding on to their EMP. So this is what Rascal tries to do in this situation, but they misread it a little bit. So he thinks that Chips has his ultimate here, but of course you can see he's at 83%, not information that they have. So Rascal runs in, he's invisible, pops out, and he's looking as if he's going to pop the EMP, so he wants Chips to pop his Transcendence preemptively, and then he would try and translocate out and hold on to his EMP and then use it to negate Harry Hook's ultimate. So it could have been an amazing play coming out from Rascal here. So to summarize, he would have, the rest of his team is in a position to kite, so this Transcendence wouldn't have got anything done, which is why, coincidentally, or rather not coincidentally, but this is why I actually dislike teams in general popping their Transcendences preemptively, is because anytime the Sombra is going for a play, like a bait play, the team's so far away that you're not going to be able to get anything done with it. So in the end, all you end up doing is feeding like both of your support ults over, because then they just counter the sound barrier as well. It's kind of, in a sense, it would even be better for Chips Iron to die here and then to either pop off Harry Hook's ultimate or just try and play around the Primal Rage or something. But Chips doesn't even have it up, so that's not even something that's going through his mind. He literally just has to kill Rascal. But because Rascal's gone for this bait play, again, because Void's out of the mech and they don't feel like they can play aggressively into it, the fact that he finds Harry Hook here, if they had been in a position to play aggressively, Kongdoo Panthera, this would have been the perfect time for Rascal to pop it. And I think Rascal would have popped it if the rest of his team was in a position to follow up on it. But they aren't. They're in a position to kite because he's gone in for the bait play, and so they want to force out the Transcendence and then just disengage really quickly. So Kongdoo Panthera, the rest of their team is really far back at this point in time. So they wouldn't be able to follow up on it even if he uses the EMP here and catches both of them. So it's not like Rascal made a misplay in this situation. It's just that they've set this up in such a way that this is the only play that he could have made, I think. So Rascal just kind of flirts around with him. Chips hits like 3 orbs, and Harry Hook hits a couple of beams. Hits 1 beam actually because he's on 42 health, and he has to recall, so he's got no value out of his EMP. And you know, that's a little bit of like a greedy or rather risky play coming out from Rascal. They could have gone for a safer play, you know, where they go in with the sound barrier. So like they engage with the sound barrier, or they force EnVyUs to engage with either the sound barrier or the Transcendence. They reply, so they match 1 defensive ult to 1 defensive ult. And then when Harry Hooks comes out, they just use the EMP and they catch both. They like remove the sound barrier from everybody, and they manage to get the hack onto them. So in that situation, your advantage is that you have like an extra defensive ultimate actually in play, and they're hacked. So it's like it's still a big advantage. Whereas what Rascal was going for would have given them an EMP plus a defensive ult and absolutely nothing over an EnVyUs. So it's like a much bigger advantage. It's like the risk reward is good for Rascal in that situation, because now they can still fall back and use this strategy. So the idea here is to match defensive ults, and when Harry Hook uses his, they use the sound barrier to take it away. Or Rascal just comes in afterwards for a hack. So, but again, because Void is out of mech here, crucially, you can see that Coco's jumped in, and they feel like because they don't have any peel for the rest of their team, and EnVyUs is engaging, and you know, Void might end up getting caught or something as well. Waka Waka gets an itchy trigger finger and feels like he has to pop the sound barrier really early on. So he pops it, and it's mad early, to be honest, because the only player that's involved here is Coco, and nobody's taken any damage as well. Nobody was in danger of dying, and in general, because Kongdoo Panthera are defending, they actually want to put EnVyUs under the pressure, like put pressure on them as they're coming through the choke, so that Harry has to pop his sound barrier first. So Panthera used their sound barrier first, and Rascal just kind of blind EMPs into it, without really knowing who's there other than the tanks. So he uses his EMP on the floor here. And now, because EnVyUs had set themselves up so well, and they were kind of expecting it and playing really defensively, both Chips and Harry were not caught by that. You know, they're miles away. So this really is, I think, a misplay from Rascal, just to go in and kind of blind EMP. I think both Waka Waka and Rascal kind of got itchy trigger fingers here, wanting to close it out after their bait play failed. And EnVyUs just stay good positioning, passive, keep their supports out of line of sight without Rascal having to dive really deep. Managed to put pressure on just with a bit of Mickey and Coco running in to force out the sound barrier. And so this EMP kind of catches Mickey. They get the hack on him, and almost, but Mickey calls out, you know, I've been hacked, I'm getting pressured. And Chips pops his Transcendence, just manages to catch him. Honestly, it must have been about 2 HP, the difference there between Mickey getting out of mech or not. So that's kind of lucky coming out from EnVyUs. But then they've like perfectly got Panthera in a terrible position where they got no value out of Waka Waka's ult, no value out of the EMP, and Harry Hook can come back in and use his support ult. So they absolutely kind of wiped the floor with them in terms of their ult management in that fight. And Kongdoo Panthera making a couple of really crucial mistakes to lose control of the fight in the end there, when really they did have the advantage.